They are here.
Let's begin with a word of prayer this evening. Gracious Father, we thank you for this opportunity to meet together. And Father, we thank you for the wonderful gifts you give us in this life. Thank you, Father, for our nation. Thank you, Father, for our state. Thank you for our community here. And God, we ask for your blessing on this meeting. I pray that we would have clarity of thought and speech. We pray that truth would be spoken and that you would guide us in wise decisions. Father, we thank you again for this opportunity. And Father, we pray for leaders over us from the local scale to the national one. Leaders who love you and your ways, who love righteousness. God, we pray for you to glorify yourself. And Father, thank you most of all for the gift of salvation in your Son, Jesus. And, I pray that he, our King and our Lord and Savior, would be glorified this evening as well. We ask in his name. Amen.
Amen.
I do.
You really have to. Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor. All right, now we're going to be led in a rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, which can be found in your hymnals underneath your chairs. So turn to page 528. You're ready to play, aren't you? All right. That's something that you won't get at a Democrat rally right there. Well, thank you so much, Mrs. Radeball, for that fine performance. I'm going to go ahead and call up the candidates here. This is all about you, so saddle up, partners. We got Wesley Davis. We got Stephen Wolfe. Give them a round of applause. My name's Cody Higley, and I'm with the Operation Marion Watch, Watchman's Report. So we've got Jason Foreman and his son Javen down here broadcasting tonight's event. So it will be posted on YouTube, on Facebook, on Rumble, on any iteration of social media imaginable, including MarionWatch.com, so be sure to check it out. Let's give it a round of applause for Jason and Javen. And I want to thank everybody for attending tonight, but special thanks to those who organized the event, Judy O'Hare and Mary Stoneburner. So, Mary, right there, thank you so much. Judy, way off in the back, thank you for putting this together. Can you turn this mic up, Pastor? And also want to say thank you to the pastor, Pastor Ray Ball, and the congregation here at Calvary Bible Baptist Church. So we appreciate you allowing us to hold this function here to give people an opportunity to meet their candidates for Republican primary for the 86th District State Rep seat. So thank you, Pastor Ray Ball and Calvary Bible Baptist. Go ahead and give them a round of applause. And we were led in prayer by Pastor J.D. Haas of LaRue Baptist Church. So we want to give him a shout out there, give him a round of applause. He's going to be tonight's moderator as well. And we got to call out the politicians. If you don't call out a politician when they're in public, they get very upset. So let's see who we got here. Where's Bill Dichtel, Republican Councilman at Large for Marion City Council?
Ward 6.
6th Ward, sorry, at large. My mistake. It's musical chairs in Marion City Council right now, so, it gets a little confusing. We've got Sean Barr back there representing Marion's 1st Ward. We've got the president of the council who helped organize this event, Mary Stoneburner, right there. We got Marion County Commissioner Kevin Davidson, looking sharp as always with his purple tie. Pink. Is that pink, Kevin?
Purple.
It's purple. Pam? Yeah, I'm not done yet. Give me a chance. I'll get there. We got Pam Larkin, Marion City Council, 2nd Ward, and who else do we got? Am I missing any? Jason Schaubers running for Marion County Commissioner, and his opponent in that Republican primary is also here, Tim Mooney. We're missing 2 of the other opponents, I think. Sir, what's your name?
Chuck Air, Jackson Township Trustee, Union County.
Came all the way from Union County, folks. So, anybody else? Any other elected officials?
I'm North Union School Board, and I'm also on Tri-River School Board.
All right. Well, let's give you all a round of applause. Thanks for coming out. Yeah.
You got a young man back there.
Oh, Mr. Rick. Oh, yes. Mr. Riley, right?
Yes.
All right. You're running for Union County Commissioner.
Correct.
All right. Thanks for coming out all the way from Union County. We love when those southern folks come up here, up north to Marion, And speaking of a couple southern folks, we've got 2 up here right now. We've got Stephen Wolfe and we've got Wesley Davis. Let's hear it for them again. They came up here to your time. All right, and you may be wondering, I've seen some signs out there. This Weber guy's running for state rep. Well, Ben Weber is running for state rep. He couldn't make it tonight. So we've got Wesley Davis, we've got Stephen Wolfe, and as the late great songwriter Meatloaf said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to shut up here pretty soon. Just want to say we live in perilous times. Prices are up, taxes are up, spending by government at all levels is up. Locally, our city, county, city school district are facing substantial budget deficits, and now we've got the state of Ohio spending like drunken sailors and trying to put highways and resource draining data centers where they don't belong. And as Ronald Reagan said, we could say the government spends like drunken sailors, but that would be unfair to drunken sailors. Because the drunken sailors use their own money. So, we all love the Gipper. And tonight, again, our moderator, Pastor Haas, will be asking each candidate a series of 5 questions. Each candidate will get 3 minutes to answer those questions. We do have 2 questions that we received from Ben Weber. So we'll be reading those. He did not respond. I don't know that he was sent the other 3. So we're going to ask 5 questions of Mrs. Davis and Mr. Wolfe. And the responses to 2 of those questions that were sent to Ben Weber will be read by Pastor Haas. So I think that pretty well, let me make sure to check my notes here. And then after, I gotta say what happens after the moderated questions, after we're going to open it up for audience questions. So we just ask that, now Judy, where is the paper and writing utensils? Where were they placed? They're in the back. Judy will go around, and if you have a question, jot it down on the piece of paper. And then when that segment opens up, then I will come down with the microphone and just raise your hand. I'll go over, you hand me your piece of paper, I'll read the question, and then you'll get the response. They'll have 3 minutes. You can direct it at an individual candidate, or you can direct it at both candidates. It's your question, it's your choice. And if you have a follow-up, a quick follow-up, we don't have time for this to go on forever, unfortunately. I'll be right there, and we can hand the mic back to you, and you can ask a follow-up if you want. But that's pretty much the format. We'll also have an opening here. We'll have a closing at the end, and then we are going to do a rendition. Everybody loves to sing. We're going to sing "My Country 'Tis of Thee," Sweet Land of Liberty, and it's on page 529 in your hymnals. So, the last thing I had jotted down here was active participation is crucial to the preservation of a republic. So let's get active. And Pastor Oz, let's go, buddy. Let's get active. Yeah, we're gonna just go to Yep. All right, that'll work.
Very good. Well, it's good to be here with you all tonight. I'm Pastor Haas, and I'm actually pastor of a church sent out by Labor Baptist. So our church is in Marion, New City Fellowship, and so I was asked to moderate this evening, and I'm happy to serve in this capacity. I do have 5 questions that I will ask these candidates, the first 2 of which, as Cody just said, Ben wrote a response. So I'll read Ben's responses to those 2 questions. Well, let's go ahead and start with the first one.
The opening first. The opening from the canvas.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Just introductions.
You guys prepared opening statements, right?
Okay, very good. So, sorry I misunderstood.
That's all right.
Well, we'll begin with Leslyn then. Go ahead and give your opening statement.
First of all, thank you for being here with me tonight. I'd be remiss if I did not recognize and introduce my husband, Eddie, who is right here, my son, Jackson, who is 13, and my daughter, Josie. This is my campaign. My children are my campaign managers over here, and my husband is my biggest support. So my opening statements are that I have spent a decade working very hard to fight for small businesses and livelihoods in the state of Ohio. I started a small business, and my husband and I together have developed multiple businesses. And what I have seen as someone who grew up under the poverty line with 6 kids and a mother that was a young widow is that the American dream is possible so long that we keep the government out of our way. And as a person who has worked in policy from the outside, pushing back on special interest groups and government overreach, I have spent a decade witnessing firsthand what good policy, good reform, or even killing bad policy does to the families of Ohio. These are kitchen table issues. And as a candidate in the 86th district for state representative, I plan to take that 10 years of advocacy and experience, partnered with my 4 years as a township trustee, driving economic development and pushing back on corporate welfare and bringing those skill sets to our families. I always say this of the doors. You hear a lot, I want to protect my community, I want to protect our families. Well, you all are grown men and women. You don't need the government protecting you. What you need in an elected official is someone who stops government overreach into your bank accounts, into your homes, and so that you can protect your own. You can protect your land, you can protect your family, and generate generational wealth for your children and your own. So thank you for that couple of minutes.
Stephen, your opening statement.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all for setting this up. This is very well attended, and it's a very important event for us to meet with the voters and have conversations with people that are going to be voting in this primary here. So I also want to introduce my family. My mother and father, Mike and Andrea, my cousin Peggy, and Uncle Chris also decided to get up here, so I appreciate you guys attending. But you might look at me, I'm a younger man from Marysville, Ohio. I've lived in Union County my entire life. I'm 27 years old now, and my family, spans from all corners of the district and up here into Marion. I can remember playing travel baseball up here in Marion, going to different events. My brother had soccer games at Marion Harding, and I think the reason that I'm getting involved in this race is that this is my home. This is where I grew up. This is where my family grew up. This is where I want to start my family. And having spent 4 years in Columbus as a legislative aide, I've seen how the work gets done on the inside. I see the issues that arise and the conversations and the influence that lobbying and special interests have on drafting legislation, on crafting budgets, having worked on 2 operating budgets and 2 capital budgets. I see the necessary changes that we have to make sure that we're not spending upwards of hundreds of billions of dollars a year just to fund the state of Ohio. There's a lot better places that money could be, and I think making sure that the state of Ohio isn't spending that money, as you mentioned, like drunken sailors, does one better for the residents of the 86 House District, but it also makes sure that we're being responsible with taxpayer dollars. And I think that also ties into property tax. That is, anyone that you talk to, obviously property tax is the biggest issue in this race. And I think there are much needed reforms. And when I speak with residents, and the overwhelming majority of residents that I've spoken with have that same concern, and that's the priority for them in how they decide on who they're going to vote for in this election. But my campaign comes down to, this is my home, this is my community, the people that live here. I have conversations with every day as a councilman in Marysville, serving in the 1st Ward. I got involved in Marysville politics as a write-in candidate and beat my opponent by 9 votes. And that tied into why I truly wanted to get involved, was because that is my community. I saw the concerns that residents had with the way things were going in Marysville, and obviously there's more to do. Anyone you ask, you can see that Southern Union County, Jerome Township, Marysville is a very, very busy place. There's a lot going on, but that's why I decided to get involved. This district is home to me, and I truly care about what happens here. So I thank you guys again for setting this up, and look forward to answering these questions.
Okay, now we start with the questions, and these questions have multiple parts, so I hope you can keep track and remember. But I think you will. But the first one is about property tax bills. This first line, I feel personally, property tax bills have drastically increased in Union and Marion counties over the past 5 years, with increases exceeding 50%. Some much higher than 50%. With no practical solution being offered by state officials, a group of citizens is currently collecting petitions to place a constitutional amendment on the ballot, which would eliminate property taxes in the state of Ohio. This initiative has strong support and is likely to pass if placed on a future ballot. So here are the questions. First, do you currently pay property tax? Second, do you support this citizen-driven ballot initiative to eliminate property taxes without exception? And explain that. And then finally, if elected state representative, how would you plan to make up for the loss in property tax revenue received by local governments for things like cities, school districts, and fire departments? And we'll begin with you, Wesley.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so the first question is, do I pay property tax? Yes. I think, Eddie, when did we build our first home? It was 2009, I believe. And so I've paid property tax for many years. And what I've realized is we are taxed on unrealized gains. And currently this year alone, our property tax went up, $5,500. And that's a lot when you're raising a family and balancing a budget to run a household. The second question is, do I support the citizens-driven abolishment without exception?
Yes.
So what I will say is, I would say that first I want to note that I am a township trustee, I'm a township girl, and I love our local entities, I love local control, and I am very pro police and fire. But I am very much in favor of the citizens-driven abolishment, and I will tell you very concisely why. Since the 1970s, the state has been telling all of our residents, listen, vote for the state income tax because we are going to use those funds to fund our schools at the state level. They've been saying that. They've said it about gambling tax. They've said it about lottery and so on and so forth. There's been many, many promises made since the 1970s. And what has happened? Promises made, promises not kept. So here's the issue. We have to get down to whether or not the abolishment happens, the mandate from the citizens remains the same for me. If the abolishment goes through, you better believe that we need business-minded people to pick up the pieces and iron out the kinks or the chaos to ensure that our schools are funded, our police and fire are funded, and that the state is handled in a way where communities are safe and there is stability. And I'll tell you how I plan to do that. So that's if the abolishment happens. That mandate's the same. If that abolishment does not go through, the mandate is still the same. I will work very hard to make sure that we take school funding off the local level. And the way that I plan to do that is dive down into our budget, get back to the basics. Our state budget is full of waste, duplicate programs. We have state agencies that do the same thing. I found alone $14 billion in waste in our state budget. I believe that school tax alone is around 13 to 14 billion of that. So tightening up our state's budget and getting rid of the sweetheart deals, the fraud, the waste, and getting back to the basics is one way that I'd like to handle that, whether or not the abolishment happens or not. And I do have a detailed plan, but I am out of time. I'm listening, Mary.
Stephen, before you respond, and we'll be switching the order of the responses throughout these, but I'm going to read Ben's response. Ben answered this question, and I'll read what he wrote. He said, property taxes are out of control. Families are being forced to make impossible choices. Seniors deciding whether to leave the homes they've lived in for decades. Parents stretching every dollar just to keep up. And young people wondering if they'll ever be able to afford to buy their first house. The system is failing everyday Ohioans, and the frustration is real. That's why I signed the petition to let the voters decide. These skyrocketing increases are crushing families and putting the dream of homeownership further out of reach. People are fed up, and they deserve to be heard. Voters, not politicians and bureaucrats, should have the final say on how to fix runaway property tax bills. That's exactly what this initiative represents. If elected state representative, I will stand strong for funding police, fire, schools, and all public safety services, while also delivering real relief to homeowners. We can protect essential community services while providing fair, responsible tax reform. This is about drawing the line and saying enough is enough. It's about restoring fairness, protecting the ability to own a home, and putting people back in control. Now is the time for bold tax reform, and I'm ready to lead that fight. So that's Ben's response to that question. And now, Stephen, your response.
So I would say I am a product of the unaffordability of the current market in homes. I'm not someone that pays property taxes, but I don't think that is the end-all be-all in a discussion. I think when you look at the conversation and the substance of what is being said, that is what matters most to me. You can have people that pay property taxes, that don't pay property taxes. It matters what they believe and what they're saying, not who they are individually. I would also say, in regards to the petition, the frustration and anger on the increase in property taxes is justified. I completely understand where the motive is coming from to do this. It makes sense, but I am not in favor of this petition. Serving on Marysville City Council and speaking with trustees and different entities around Union County and Marion County, totally getting rid of property taxes without a funding solution in place is suicide for a lot of these places. That most townships, 70% or more of their budget comes from property taxes. The same can be said with different school districts. Department of Developmental Disabilities, Department of Health. I think if we're going to eventually get rid of property taxes, we have to make sure that we have a thought-out process, a plan that we can walk out before just getting rid of property taxes. I would also say, if I am to be elected, I don't want the solution to be more government and more spending by the state to answer that question of how are the local governments going to afford this loss of property tax revenue. I've pushed back on different conversations of just using the state to spend, because I don't believe that's a conservative value, a conservative mindset of let's rely on the state government to fund our local governments. I think local control is very important and is key in the decision-making process, because every township's different, every school district's different. We have to have those conversations locally. Can't rely on the state for that. But I would say there's a process that needs to be done. Reforms, obviously, that need to occur. And I think that starts with changing the way that property taxes themselves are looked at, rather than a valuation-based formula that uses your neighbor's home, and if they sell their house for $500,000, that's affecting your property tax. I think looking at a purchase price-based model, that one isn't keeping people renting for life, but also exempting seniors, those on fixed income, disabled veterans from paying that property tax. I don't think someone should rent from the government. I don't think someone should be forced out of their home just because they can't afford to pay a property tax bill that they might not be involved in the school system anymore. But I think having those conversations with people, most residents that I spoke with, I'll say 95% agree that while it's an issue, property tax is a necessary evil, and if we can work our way to getting rid of it, I'm in favor of that, but not all in one fell swoop.
Thank you. The next question is about the 7123 connector. So this time, Stephen, you'll begin, and then Leslie, you'll answer next. So here's the scenario and the questions. House Bill 54 authorized a feasibility study for the construction of a new $500+ million highway connector between I-71 and Marengo in Morrow County to US 23 in Richland Township. Many homes and farms in Marion County will be greatly impacted by this new highway should state officials move forward with its construction. Although the new highway will not be located in the 86th district, it will be built at the district's eastern border and cast its shadow, for better or worse, in the 86th district. So here are the questions. Do you support or oppose this project, and explain? And if elected state representative, how do you plan to address this highly controversial project? And finally, how should policymakers balance economic development interests with those of the people living in the communities who are negatively impacted by these projects? So Stephen first.
Thank you for the question. I am against the connector. It's similar, honestly, to US 33 that runs through Marysville up to Bell Fountain. It is a project that I think, one, isn't taking into account the impact that it will have on local residents. And like you mentioned, it's not in the 86th House District, but a lot, obviously, that is going to impact the residents of the 86 House District here in Marion County and going up and down on 23 and the connector itself. I, for one, don't, agree with the amount of homes and farmland that are going to be impacted by this project. It's going to result in a lot of dead-end roads that are already built, and now that the land's coming through here, as the Marion County prosecutor has mentioned, there's going to be a lot of litigation and legal conversations and battles that go on for the land that one will have to be bought by the state. That land isn't going to be taxed. There's a lot of revenue that will be lost. And then also, we have to make sure that the people that are being impacted by this are getting a fair value for their land. Like I said, I'm against the project. And I think at the state level, the focus for me would be returning the focus on local residents and the people that are being impacted the most by this. I think a lot of times in Columbus, the people are looking at it from a 1,000-foot view, and they're not on the ground. They're not ones that are being impacted by decisions that are always made. So I think we have to make sure that the residents of Marion County are being the ones that are having the most voice and having the most decision-making power in this. It's a good question on economic development. I think Marysville is a good example, honestly, of there's a lot of development happening in town, and especially if you look at like data centers, they're willing to spend a lot of money to come here, but they have a negative impact on the community. And I think it's a fine line of balancing the economic development that comes in with the people that are going to be affected by it. I don't want the development itself just to negatively impact the community that it's supposed to help. So I think looking at this project, we have to make sure that the local decision makers, the local citizens, are the ones that have the most say, and they're the ones that are going to be impacted by it the most.
Your response?
So I am against the connector as well. And in fact, I've spent the past couple of weeks putting together packages to help our families, and some of them are not even in the 86th district, but it's families in the 87th district, to help them understand what they have access to in our in statute to protect themselves. So an example is the Miller family that is close by. They were not aware of some of the things that they can do to protect themselves. And I think as a state representative, this is something that you may know about me. I'm quite a fighter. And I feel if there's government overreach, I will be the first person at your door. And so when I heard about the connector and I heard about what was happening to some of the families on the front lines, the first thing I did was introduce them into ways that they can help themselves and what they have access to do that. How do I know this? Because as a township trustee, I've experienced this firsthand with some of my current supporters who have actually fought back against the government taking their land. Eminent domain is not going to be something that you see on my postcard over here because not everybody's impacted by it. But that is something that I'm very, very passionate about. And one of the key things that I would like to relay, it is anti-American for the government to swoop in, take your land, force it out of your hands, and say that they're going to give you fair market value. If you are a farmer, and the government comes in and says, I'm going to pay you the price of soybeans for your land, and then flip it to commerce. First of all, you should decide if that happens in the first place. Second of all, if you decide to allow that to happen because it is your land, they should be paying best and highest use, commercial rates, the best and highest commercial value there is, because they are taking it and they are flipping it to commerce. But that's not what's happening today. Legislation needs to be strengthened around eminent domain. I've been around families who have lost their land who weren't paid at all. Hardly anything. And these are folks that couldn't afford that high power attorney. So this is something I'm very, very passionate about. I will work with Marion. This is a Delaware County problem. And I also told our residents in Marion this. The reason the connector, that went down in flames in that area is because people fought back, right? So it didn't work there. Now they want to kick it over to Marion. They want to make Delaware's problem Marion's problem. Well, I don't think that it is okay to just, kick the can down the road. And what I helped our residents understand is just because something failed over there politically does not make it a necessity in this town. And I didn't get to answer all those questions, but
It's okay. I'll move on to Ben's response. So this is the second written response he gave, and the final one from Ben. His response to this question was, he says, I oppose the highway connector as proposed by ODOT. At its core, this issue is about protecting private property rights and standing up for the people who call these communities home. Smart conservative growth matters, but it should never come at the cost of forcing families off their land or disrupting farms and homes that have been built over generations. The use of eminent domain for a $500+ million project like this should concern every Ohioan. Property rights are fundamental, and they deserve to be defended, not sidelined. I've stood up for private property rights as a lawyer, and I will stand up for them here. This highway would also change the character of our region in very real ways. More traffic, more noise, and lasting impacts on the quality of life for residents along the corridor and in the 86th district. These aren't theoretical trade-offs. They're consequences that families will live with every day. If elected state representative, I will push for full transparency and real accountability. That means strong public input, honest evaluation of the alternatives, and a clear commitment to minimizing harm. I will fight to ensure that the voices of local residents are not drowned out by top-down decisions. There is a better way to approach growth. We don't have to choose between economic development and respecting people's homes, land, and livelihoods. It all starts by putting people first. So that's Ben's response to that question. And with that, we'll move on to the third scenario in question, and Leslie, you'll begin this answer. Here's the scenario. Over the past 50 years, Marion County, and especially the city of Marion, has experienced a significant economic decline. Once a statewide powerhouse of industry and wealth, it has now been greatly surpassed by counties like Delaware and your home county of Union. The 86th district is currently represented by someone from Union County, and her predecessor was also from Union County. During those terms, Union County has grown significantly, with much to show in the way of economic development, while Marion has very little to show. If you're elected state representative, what is your plan to help Marion County with economic development?
Okay, this is wonderful. First and foremost, I think that we need a representative that has experience in driving infrastructure projects and has a great relationship with their locally elected. I know that right now, our Marion City Council, they are facing a deficit. I've sat at the table with our Marion City Council members and helped to comb through some of the tools that can offset the budgets that they have and that they're faced with, so that they can free up dollars through creative ways and different economic development tools to offset costs, so that they can help to address that deficit and drive infrastructure projects in a different way. But more than that, I think what we need is someone who knows how to go down to the State House and advocate for infrastructure dollars and capital improvement dollars to be brought back home. There is a real need here. Marion is facing a decline in population and a decline in jobs. We need someone who has great experience in public-private partnerships, and being someone, myself and my husband, who have a background, the only candidate in this race with a background in private sector, I understand what a government official and a private partnership would look like and what needs to happen in those relationships to drive economic development forward in Marion County. But it all starts with good relationships, good advocacy, pragmatic approaches, and knowing how to really bring your colleagues along downtown. There's 99 state reps downtown. How does one singular state rep fight for their district and get dollars brought back home. They need to know how to make a great case. And having 20 plus years in the private sector, understanding how business works, I feel that I'm the only candidate in this race that would have the ability to fight for our residents in a way to drive that public-private partnership in a way that brings jobs and infrastructure back to the county of Marion.
Stephen, your response?
Yeah, I would say having spent time in the rooms making decisions on budgets in Columbus, on the capital budget and the operating budget, I've seen what happens when people don't have a strong argument for why that money should be spent in their district. There's a lot of conversations that occur, a lot of money that gets allocated to specific areas. Larger cities tend to be the ones that get a lot of money. I think, think of Columbus and Cleveland and Cincinnati and Dayton. They get a lot of money in the budgeting processes. Having served on Marysville City Council, I think a great example of a public-private partnership that we've worked on is the Connect project in Uptown Marysville, kind of redeveloping our old silo site and the old water treatment plant, using that as a way to, one, fix a blighted area. If you've been through Marysville on North Main Street, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's a nice area, but it could be fixed. There's a lot of things that have fallen apart through that part of town. And I think working with different groups, with different people that have that capital to come in and spend the money in the district, being willing to make those necessary improvements to areas that are, one, going to draw in younger professionals, going to liven up in Uptown. And I think looking at Marion, looking at Marysville, the Uptown community is the heart of the cities. The people that live there, that shop there, that eat there, that work there, are the ones that make a city feel like a city. And it keeps that small town feel while cities grow and population changes. So I think tying in the work I've done in Columbus, the conversations I've had with different elected officials, and the relationships that I've built with those officials that are still in office, that have made decisions and are in the ability to have that decision-making power is very important. But I think looking at what we've done in Marysville in terms of economic development and making sure that we have the ability to be an attractive candidate for different projects, but making good decisions and utilizing the economic development tools that we have as a city is important. And I think highlighting that at the city level, obviously the state representative is going to be the person advocating for that in Columbus, but I think empowering our local governments to have that decision-making process, know what they're able to do, and learn from the surrounding communities on what works best to draw in that necessary improvement, I think is a benefit for the city of Marion and Marion County as a whole. Because as Marion goes, the county will go. As Marysville goes, Union County goes. So I think making sure that we have a strong decision-making process and use existing relationships and those relationships that I've formed while serving on Marysville City Council, I think is a big benefit.
I didn't use all my time. Could I say one last thing, or should?
How much time does she have left? Do we have a record of that?
30 seconds.
I thought about 45.
45 seconds.
Timekeepers, so you have 45 set up? Go for it.
It dawned on me as I was thinking about what I see going on in downtown Marion already, and being on the forefront of pushing back on corporate welfare in Jerome Township. What we see is a lot of the incentives given to Amazons and the Microsofts. We need to really drive incentives for our small businesses and our startups, and that's another way.
Okay, thank you. The next question has to do with COVID policies. If you can think back to those difficult days. Here's the scenario. In the spring of 2020, Governor Mike DeWine, with the advisement of then Director of the Ohio Department of Health, Dr. Amy Acton, who is now running for governor, implemented a number of draconian mandates that did great harm to Ohio's small businesses and also infringed on the freedom of every Ohioan, from social distancing requirements to mask mandates and financial incentives for people to take the jab, The policies adopted by the state of Ohio were unprecedented in the history of the state. So here are the questions, and Stephen, you'll respond first. The questions are, did you support the actions taken by Governor DeWine and Dr. Amy Acton during COVID? And secondly, had you been serving in the House of Representatives, what would you have done to protect the rights of Ohioans?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did not, and I do not support the actions that were taken. I've seen the detriment they've had on our public school system, on children in that early learning process, the social distancing, the masking, the skills that they have lost in that process, and having a family that's worked in our public schools, seeing the growth that these children didn't achieve in that period of time as we're going through COVID. Is detrimental, one, to them today, but also it makes us uncompetitive in other aspects as they're working to get jobs and to get scholarships, and just their social, emotional ability to communicate and have those conversations is, it's crazy to me that was allowed. I was in college at the time of COVID, my senior year actually, playing football down at Davidson in North Carolina, and we went through and we had this conversation beforehand. The crazy policies that, one, happened here in Ohio, but also at my college, where we're forced to wear face masks under our helmet in the North Carolina heat while playing football. It's crazy to me that the decision-making process that was used then was, let's get more government involved. I don't support, mandating vaccines like COVID. I don't support the masking and social distancing vaccines, or the social distancing measures. I think it's one of those things where COVID is still around today, and anymore it's treated like the flu. It is the flu. You can get a COVID vaccine every 3 months, and people that get it still get the flu. Masking has been shown not to work. Social distancing didn't do much of anything. It's crazy to me that our governor decided to listen to the decisions of their administrative health department, Amy Acton, and it disappointed me, to be honest, because I followed, Governor DeWine and seeing what the negative impact that had on our state as a whole. If I were to be elected then and had been in office, I would have pushed back. I've been, actually, my first day down in Columbus as a legislative aide was when they were having the COVID vaccine mandate discussion on the House hearings, and the rooms were full of people coming in, both for and against it, and protesters, and seeing the dynamic that was down there, pushing back, overriding the governor's decisions, because I don't think our governor can be the end-all be-all on a decision-making process. That one is detrimental to small businesses. There are many small businesses that haven't recovered from COVID, and also looking at just people themselves that are still scared of getting COVID and dying today. I think that isolation and fear festered during COVID and is still not solved to this day because of it. I would push back, overriding the governor's decisions, and also making sure that we are relying on people's own abilities to make decisions. And if they choose to get a vaccine, let them get it, but you can't force that on someone else. And if they don't want to go out, let them stay inside their home.
Wesley, your response.
Okay, buckle up. I was a mother of a kindergartner and a second grader who was forced to wear a mask. My daughter has dyslexia, and these kids are deemed COVID generation kids. The impact and the education that was stolen from them in that time is a travesty. I see a school teacher in the room. You know what happened to our children. Not to mention the social pressures, because I was that only 14% mother that said no masks for my children, and that the pressure and how they would ostracize in the school systems. Not all the teachers, and definitely not more north you get. But I saw firsthand what it did to my children. All right, so I have 2 kids that are on an iPad in the middle of the day, September on, for a year, and then you know what that's like. I was a business owner of a brick and mortar store. I was forced out of my business to play school teacher, which I am unlicensed for, by the way. And to do that was a hard hit on the revenue of a business that I used my own capital to build, and I was not allowed in my business. Do you think I followed those rules? No, I did not. I snuck into my business. The governor made me out to be, a criminal? To go into my business to save the 70% revenue I would have lost. Here I am putting paper over my windows and sneaking products out the door like it's prohibition. Are you kidding me? Okay, that happened. What is this, communist China? My husband had COVID. Somehow they found out, and we had the health department calling us, checking to see if I blocked him in a room. And remember that? And then the first day of kindergarten, they tried to suspend my children because they knew my husband had COVID because he went to urgent care and tried to prevent my daughter and my son from, it would have been her first day of kindergarten. They wouldn't have been able to attend the first 2 weeks of school. It was her first time in school. That is government reach on a sick level. Now, not to mention at the time I was running a consulting firm. I was representing 15 trade schools in over 30 counties, and I was charged with contingencies plans because the government shut down all these trade schools. I was recommended by 6 legislators across the state of Ohio to be a part of the conversation for reopening the trade schools. Do you know what DeWine said about me? Well, we can't have Wesleyan. She's too aggressive. You bet your bottom dollar I'm aggressive, because when it comes to government overreach, trying to get in the way of your business and your children, I will push back and be as aggressive as I need to be every single time.
The last scenario in questions. The state of Ohio approved, and Leslie, you'll answer first on this one. The state of Ohio approved an annual budget of roughly $100 billion for 2026 and 2027. Meanwhile, the city of Marion is currently in a state of fiscal caution with nearly $9 million in negative fund balances. The county of Marion recently approved a 2026 budget that contains a deficit of $4.5 million. And Marion City Schools is facing a 2026 deficit of $3.9 million. When you analyze the financials of all 3 of these government entities in Marion County, the root cause of the problem is spending, with most of it going towards salaries and benefits. What can be done at the state level to address spending at the local level and to better allocate state resources? Does the state of Ohio need to be doged? If so, what would you recommend be cut?
Well, I can tell you right now, this kind of goes back to property tax too. In order to cover what we need to cover, we need $24 billion, right? And so I already told you that to run our schools and have the state take on school funding, let's just make it even a little higher, $14 billion. Well, I found $14 billion in waste in our state budget, sweetheart deals. You saw how the Brown Stadium got $600 million of a loophole tax, so you funneled money to a private company up north. Sure, they might, create some jobs, but you times that by 10, 15, 20. You have millions and billions of dollars that could be recovered that are going to things that are not the ABCs, not the 1, 2, 3s. And you talk about school candidates for school board. What do you always hear them saying? The Republicans always say, get back to the basics, the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s. The administrative bloat has got to go. We have duplicate programs. We have over 160 state agencies that have overlapping services. We have billions of dollars in waste just in state agencies alone. There are ways we can cap the spending. There's so many things that we can do to recover billions of dollars to take the pressure off our local entities, our homeowners, our taxpayers. And the state has not been willing to tighten its own seatbelt. It has not been willing to tighten its own budget. It's just expecting you to do it every single time. So I have already worked with our Marion City Council on many of these items to discuss how we can offset what is going on with the budget, use economic development tools, and what can go so that we can open up opportunities for economic development and drive revenue into the city, and I'll continue to do that.
So I had mentioned I've had the opportunity to work on the state budget. I'm grateful that the member that I work for, we went through a process of finding billions of dollars that are being spent at the state level on different state agencies. I look at the health department, the state health department. They're one of the most difficult agencies in the state to get a part of, and they continue to grow and have more responsibilities, and they continue to get more money in the state budget. The state, when government grows, the odds of it ever decreasing in size are very little. And I think we have to make sure that we're cutting back on the amount of money that we spend at the state level. There are necessary programs that work, awesome, but there's a lot of programs, having served on or working with the Workforce and Higher Education Committee, I see the amount of money that comes into our state education at the university level, and there's many programs in these universities that are awesome. They teach working on trades and going through the process of getting out of school earlier, not spending 4 years there and wasting that money. But there's also a lot of programs in, I'll use French as an example. I took French in college for a couple semesters to get my requirement, but there's a lot of state universities here that have full French departments, that have dozens of teachers and professors, and they're getting millions of dollars into the school, but there's only a couple students that are majoring in French over that 4-year period. I think we have to look at the state level, where we're sending our money to, making sure we're getting the results that we're wanting to get, because that money isn't the state's. The money in the city of Marysville, and the city of Marion, and any of these townships isn't that government entity's money, it's the residents' money. They're the ones that are paying the taxes. They're the ones that are relying on those services. And we have to make sure that any money being spent is truly benefiting our residents. We recently passed the city of Marysville's budget, and I've pushed back on different items and programs and expenditures that, sure, are they good, awesome, yes, they can be great expenditures, but they're not needed. There's different things that the state does that it doesn't need to be involved in. I look at the arts. I have no problem with art and murals and statues and whatever that process looks like and grants for arts. But does the state need to be involved in that process where philanthropy, where local citizens, where private investors can go and provide that money? We can find this amount within the state budget to, one, update our school funding formula, fully implement that funding formula, but also update the numbers from 2021 to today's numbers. And it's insane to me that we continue as a conservative state and with the conservative majority in the state house to advocate for smaller government, less spending, but we continue to spend more and more and more every year. There's so much that goes on at the state house, so much influence from lobbyists and special interests that they get that money put into the budget because they have those relationships. So I think making sure someone that isn't ingrained and indebted to the lobbying community, that isn't holding those relationships, is very important.
All right, thank you. And at this point, I'm going to hand the microphone back to Cody, and he'll field some questions from the audience.
We're working off of the two, but the top one is the first one, and then the bottom is the reference.
All right, you want me to read it or you want to read it? Okay. All right, from Damien here. As a state licensed substitute teacher, I regularly see what appears to be wasteful school spending, such as entire boxes of fruits and snacks being thrown away because students simply don't take them. What steps would you take as a representative to address inefficiencies like this? More broadly, how do you believe we can better allocate school funding to reduce waste, especially when resources provided through grants are not being fully utilized? Several states now allow trained paraprofessionals or individuals with undergraduate paralegal education to provide limited legal services in areas like landlord-tenant disputes and family law. Given the high cost of legal representation, would you support legislation in our state to expand these kinds of programs to improve access to justice for families going through difficult situations such as eviction or divorce? That's quite a question, Damien. Thank you. Who went last? Who started last? I think you did, right?
I spoke last.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead. Is it for both of them?
Yeah, they're both more than welcome to answer.
All right, Steven.
So that was really, I almost feel like are you going first? Okay. Okay, as far as school waste, my biggest concern is that we are constantly putting levies on a ballot when our residents are already squeezed. And as a mother who is raising children, I can tell you right now that my bigger concern is we have a lot of social emotional learning programs that I think we spend a lot of money on, and I know that every school district is a little bit different. But what I do see is that we have a lot of waste on those social emotional learning projects, but we don't have the outcomes that we need, and we also don't have the intervention specialists that we need. I have a daughter who is a remarkable student. She is incredible, and I know that there are many kids with dyslexia who don't get services the way that she needs. This is a real problem when we're spending money on social emotional projects about how do you feel, and we aren't even achieving our reading, writing, and arithmetic levels that we need. So I think tightening administrative bloat, redirecting social emotional learning funds to outcomes that matter is something that we really need to focus on. But again, the state has got to take on a majority of this funding so that if we do need more, it is not such a fight to pass a levy every single time if there is one that is actually needed. As far as your second question, I'm not sure if I was following it completely, but I come from a licensed industry, so are we talking about lawyers here?
Yeah, so it's Arizona, Washington or Oregon. There's 6 states that anybody with like an undergraduate degree in paralegal studies or law, they can become a paraprofessional, is what some states classify them as. Those paraprofessionals have worked underneath like attorneys and licensed professionals for numerous years, or multiple years at that. So I guess the question is would either of you be opened up to expanding legislation to, I guess, reduce the burden or the cost to families? Obviously, divorce, separation, stuff like that, you can't always avoid those. As an undergraduate and paralegal student myself, I've had every attorney tell me, family law is the #1 moneymaker. That's exactly where you make your money at. That's what you focus on.
Okay. I think I know where you're going with this, but let me leave you with this because I don't know all the ins and outs of what's required. But I am from the trade industry, and I've seen across Ohio an effort to deregulate licenses in my field, and my husband has seen it come from the trade industry. Anytime I had to talk about my industry, which was a hands-on industry, and I had to push back on maybe protecting my sector of business, the first example I would use is, if you're going to deregulate me, let's talk about, I'll get on board with that when you're ready to deregulate law licenses. Why can't I go apprentice and go past the bar? Why do I have to spend $300,000 on education to be a lawyer? And so I feel very, very strongly about deregulating law licenses. Even if you can pass a test and you can go apprentice, whether it be a paralegal or a lawyer, I think Virginia does it. Why can't we? So I think there's a lot of room to open up opportunity for people in these industries that is not under the current structure as we see it today.
Yeah, so to your first question, I think looking at, one, the amount of money we're spending at the state level for these educational programs, making a concerted effort to figure out if we're getting the results we need, and if we're wasting money, and if we're giving money just to give it, that's a problem. I also look at the federal level. I think advocating, one, as a state official, advocating for the Department of Education at the federal level to, one, I would be in favor of being abolished and giving that power back to the states and giving it back to local officials, because local government, local officials know how to spend that money better than state, federal officials do. They're on the ground, they're working with the residents, the students, they see what goes on in those classrooms. So I think making sure that, one, we aren't overspending at the state level. If we have ways, cutting that out and making sure we're getting programs that work. I've seen graduating from public schools, having family working in public schools, the amount of money that goes into it that doesn't work, that doesn't directly come from a levy or from state's funding. But I also think, as we've said, the state taking on more of that burden and making sure that local officials, local residents aren't overburdened by property tax spending, and making sure that they can make those decisions to make their own communities better. Because every school district's different. Marysville's different than North Union. North Union's different than Marion. Marion's different than Plain City. Every single school district has needs, and they have their own problems that need to be addressed. Not a one-size-fits-all program. In regards to your second question, I would be open to looking at that. I have family that work in family law in law firms throughout Central Ohio, or in Central Ohio. It's a very complicated process. As you know, there's a lot that goes into it, and we want to make sure that the people that are involved have the needed training. And I think if we can find ways to lessen that burden on individuals going through that process, having those conversations with the people that are involved and directly affected, I think it's going to lead to a better outcome. So I think, yes, I would be open to looking into that, but I don't have a solid yes or no right now for you.
Thank you, candidates. Thank you for the question, Damien. Got a couple of questions here from this row. Please describe your top priority as our representative and your first steps toward achieving it once in office.
Yeah, I'll answer that here. So my top priority is the issue that I talk about most with residents is property tax reform. I know there's disagreement on how that looks, and having worked with the property tax study committee at the state level and following the hearings and the conversations that occurred there, I've seen what can work and what doesn't work, and I also see that there's a lot of people that are going to advocate and promise something. I'm not going to promise anything. I'm going to work and do my best to try and get a result here, but I'm not going to guarantee anything because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. A lot of powerful individuals that have a yes or no say on what happens. So I think looking at property tax reform, I've advocated time and time again, rather than abolishing property taxes, and I know there's people that disagree with me, moving towards a purchase price-based model. If you buy your home for $200,000, you should be worried about, in 20 years your home being worth $400,000, and that keeps going up. I use the example of a stock. You buy a stock, you pay money for it, you're not getting taxed on that stock while you own it. It's only when you sell that stock you get taxed on it. It's an unrealized gain, and I've seen legislation at the federal level trying to tax people with stocks before they sell them, and that's crazy to me. But I think looking at that, one, if we're buying a home, you're living in it for 30 years, you have no intention to sell it, you're paying your property taxes on it, you shouldn't be punished. One, because you upkeep your house, you get a new roof, you repaint the outside, you make it look good. I don't think that a county auditor should drive around and see, you've done what you should do. Your home looks nice, you're keeping your neighborhood looking nice. You get punished for that. You also shouldn't be punished because someone else is selling their house nearby. I don't think that makes any sense. It's burdensome on individuals. I had a conversation with a woman in my ward who is probably going to have to sell her home because her husband passed away. She's in her mid-70s on a fixed income, and I just can't afford the property tax on that. And to me, that is unacceptable as a state that we allow that to happen. Having worked with residents in southern Montgomery County, there's many residents in that area as well that have that same issue of, we're going to sell our home. We can't live here anymore. We've lived here for decades, and our kids grew up here. We're involved in this community, but we can't afford property tax payments on this because it's continued to go up and up and up and up, and there's no stopping. Because Marysville, Jerome Township, other areas around the state, Delaware, the property tax values continue to go up. It's a problem when we sit here and say, well, there's some things we can do, a couple tweaks we can do, but it's not been enough. The work that's happening in Columbus, sure, we're getting in the right direction, but there's still so much more that needs to be done to have a successful reform process to make sure that our most vulnerable, our seniors, those on fixed income, disabled, veterans, are protected. They've given their time and they've been in our communities, so we have to make sure we're protecting them.
So naturally, being a homeowner and paying property tax, it's by far the number one issue for seniors. Especially my grandmother is 95 years old. She's paid for her house 20 times over at this point. I do have a plan for that. I will be sending that to our residents to line item how I plan to address that, and you'll all receive information on that. Affordability is key for me, because what I see happening is we're losing multi-generational communities. We have young families that they can't raise their children with grandparents 2 doors down running down the street because the seniors can't afford it, they're being pushed out, and the young families can't buy a home here because they can't afford it. So, it's who does it leave? It leaves people in this middle, my age in your 40s, at the top of your I don't know, career, are the only ones left. And that can't happen, because when these kids grow up, I want them 3 streets over from me if I can help it, and babysitting my grandbabies and having them run around the block to me. So affordability is critical. Every candidate in every race across the state of Ohio, like I said, will tell you, we're going to protect our families and our communities. How do you do that? How do you do that? Is you get the government out of your pocket, you get them out of your bank accounts, get them out of your business. We need to incentivize small business so that people can be entrepreneurs. They can own their own land, they can own their own operation, and so that they can build generational wealth for their children. I'm not here to protect you. You got your Second Amendment for that, okay? What you need is government off your back and out of your bank account, and that is what I'm solely focused on first and foremost before anything.
Thank you, candidates. Another great question. Got another one here for you. What policy or action of the previous representative, so they're talking Tracy Richardson, would you like to further promote or continue? And, as a contrast, what policy would you foresee that you would pivot away from? I think, Leslie, you're up.
Well, I will tell you what I would pivot away from is when COVID was happening, I specifically asked our state representative to please not support businesses promoting or being able to make you take a vaccine to work in their business. We saw this firsthand with hospitals, with nurses. We see this with businesses. I have a few friends that worked for large corporations where in order to have a meeting with the president of the company, they had to show and prove that they were vaccinated. And I know at that time, our state representative was supportive of businesses being able to mandate on you what you put in your own body. That is something that I will pivot away from every step of the way. I am one of the, I have the grade card. My grade card is A with the Ohio Medical Freedom Association. I've been kicked out of 2 pediatricians' offices because I would not follow their vaccine schedule for my children. Now, my kids have been vaccinated to a level. I'll be upfront with that, but I was not comfortable with the schedule, and I'm glad that I, was able to have the onus on it myself to do what I feel is best for my children. So that was one policy. Now, our representative, she didn't sponsor that. She wasn't driving it, but it is something that she supported, and I spoke to her personally about. So I pivot away from that. And in terms of policy that I further, I know that she's been a champion of the homestead exemption. I think that that's great. That's something that we need to continue to do. I'd like to see if we can't achieve full out, if the citizens-driven abolishment doesn't happen, I think that our seniors and our veterans, whether they're disabled or not, should be completely exempt. I think if you hit a certain age, you should just be outright exempt. I'd like to move away from property tax entirely, but that is just, I'm one of many state representatives. So I think that she's done some good things with the homestead exemption and things for veterans that I would continue to champion forward.
Yeah, so I'll start with, there's two items of policy that I would continue to work on and want to work on with her moving forward, but she's been a champion of ending human trafficking and decreasing the amount of human trafficking here in Ohio. With I-75, I-70, I-80 and 90, and the stretches that those interstates take, there's a lot of human trafficking that occurs in our cities of Columbus, Dayton, Cleveland, Toledo. So I think continuing to work on that to support victims of human trafficking and finding a way to decrease that number and eventually eliminate it here in the state. But also, I'm not a service member, haven't served in the military. I appreciate everyone who has. But her work on issues affecting veterans, supporting veterans throughout our state is very important. And I've seen the work that she's done firsthand, working in Columbus and having those conversations. So I would continue to support those two items. A decision, kind of action that she's taken and that I'm not a fan of was her vote on the speakership in the last, or it would have been 4 years ago now. Having been a legislator aide at that time, people make their own decisions. I would not have chosen to vote for Jason Stevens as speaker. I sat in the rooms, conversations, meetings, and the level of distrust and the amount of work that didn't get done and the just strain that it took on the process of passing good legislation and benefiting our citizens. I think that decision of hers is one that I disagree with. It frustrated, the staff there at the State House. It caused a lot of people not to want to be involved in the state government, but it prevented a lot of good legislation from passing. People having issues, or members of what would be then leadership and those that voted for Speaker Stevens, taking out and making sure that other members can't get bills passed. And there's multiple bills that we worked on that my boss wasn't able to get passed because he wasn't within that blue 22 who voted for the speaker. And I've seen a lot of that come back to bite a lot of the policy decisions that we make here in Ohio. So that would be the biggest decision that I would change or do opposite of her. And I know you agree on that. It is one of those things where it did not benefit and it set back the state of Ohio when we were at a very crucial time. So I think making sure that we're taking into account who we're electing in our leadership positions, so not holding grudges and making decisions on speakership or chairmanships and vice chairships and what bills get passed and what bills don't get heard, I think is a big decision to make.
And I think Stephen and I probably both would agree on House Bill 6, which was the energy bill that had to do with Larry Householder. That goes without saying.
All right, I'll ask a question here real quick. Bill, I'll get to you right after this, but it follows up nicely. How many in here is familiar with Charlie Kirk, God rest his soul, and TP USA Turning Point? You got PJ Riley over here from Turning Point, so shout out once again to him. If you check out Turning Point's website, they actually have a scorecard. You probably frequented that quite often, I would imagine. And it rates based on conservative values of limited government, fiscal responsibility, traditional cultural family values, that sort of thing. Things that we here in the grassroots expect from our Republican politicians. Unfortunately, there's so many rhinos out there. And if you check out the Ohio House of Representatives, not trying to, tell tales out of school, but the current rep for the 86th district has one of the lowest scores, according to Turning Point. So, where do you fit on that? Do you think that you're going to be up there in the mid-upper 90s, one of these conservative rock stars, or are you going to be down toward where we're sitting right now in this district? And then also with that, there's 99 state reps in the state of Ohio. Who do you admire most and would like to model your term in office under?
Yeah, so I would say ideally I feel I would probably rate in the upper 90s, 80s, 90s on those decision-making matrices. Having as a younger individual on social media. I've seen a lot of, as I'm making kind of shaping my political viewpoints and kind of having those conversations and then going through the college process when things have become so, going to Davidson College is an experience. I appreciate my time there, but I couldn't be more happier to make my way back up to Ohio and live here and in Union County and be involved in this area, because the viewpoints that I had and the viewpoints that my professors and the people that we went to school with, majority of my friends and conservative kind of viewpoints were all members of the football team. Probably 95% of the student body was very liberal, and I had a professor once say that we were in a writing class and they were, everyone's kind of down in the dumps, and this would have been 2017, and we don't know what's wrong. We're having conversations, and I think is the President Trump's election. I can tell is making everyone sad, and that was crazy to me though. But she compared that to what 9/11 was for her when she was in college. And I looked in that room around it. There was 4 other members of my team there. I looked around at them and I said, "Did I just hear that right? Did she compare 9/11 and Trump's election?" You can disagree with someone and have strong policy disagreements and vehemently dislike and even hate somebody, but to compare a tragedy like 9/11 to an election, President Trump's election, is disturbing to me. So I think going through that process helped me shape my views even more and see, getting those different experiences. So I feel like I would rate higher on that scale, and I pushed back in Marysville on different items of DEI kind of creeping its way into the city of Marysville and trying to get statements and agreements put into our rules of council. I voted against that. I voted against the city making decisions on what businesses can come into town, and there was one example of a small convenience store. I believe it was Dollar General at the time, but those types of stores wanting to come into the city, and I pushed back and said, if someone wants to start this, if Dollar General thinks they can come into Marysville, they already have 2 stores, if they want to put another one on the other side of town and think they can make money off of that, who are we as a city of Marysville to say no and get involved in that free market process? So I would, hopefully rate higher on the scale. And what was the second question?
Out of the 99 state reps, who would you like to model yourself under? Who's your favorite?
I would say I'm kind of partial. I work for Tom Young out of Southern Montgomery County. I've seen the work that he puts in. He doesn't, he doesn't back off. He makes sure that the work that we're doing and the work that we did, benefit the residents of his district. And he's going out, he's speaking, he's up all hours of the night, calling me at 1, 2 in the morning, having conversations about policy and legislation. So I would say I'm partial towards him. I've seen the work that he's done and the way that he's effective in getting legislation passed and put into other bills or put into the budget. And that's who I would hope to kind of style myself after.
Quick, PJ, what's Tom Young's TVUSA score?
Give me like a minute.
All right, Leslie, go ahead.
All right, so I think when it comes to the Turning Point scorecard, I would probably rate extremely high, considering I am a Turning Point Action Coalition board member for Healthy Americans, and I've thrown a lot of events, and PJ would be able to tell you that I actually are the coalition that we started in Union County, me and a few other women. We got I think the #1 award in the United States. Our board in Union County was noted as the most successful one out of all of them, something like that. I never got a plaque going, so I'll tell you that. I also think I would rate high because I have the highest grade card that you can get with the Ohio Gun Owners of America. I have the highest scorecard that you can get as a non-incumbent with the Ohio Medical Freedom Association. I have been endorsed by a number of very conservative, the Ohio Conservatives PAC. I was endorsed by, I'm the only candidate in this race, I'm endorsed by the Ohio Conservatives PAC and a few other very conservative associations. So I think that I would probably rate really high on that. And I actually had the pleasure of seeing Charlie Kirk 11 days before he was assassinated, and I just am very grateful for that opportunity to have had the opportunity to see him live in person before he was taken way too young. And one of the reasons his death actually impacted me is my mom was a 21-year-old widow, and my dad passed when I was 11 years old, not by assassination, but it just speaks to me on a completely different level. Being a child who lost their father, never knew them, and I can only imagine what that family is going through. So there's a special place in my heart just in that regard. It actually makes me appreciate my husband and his role as a father in a way that I could probably not put into words. As far as a legislator that I would model myself after, I've explained that I've been downtown fighting on behalf of small businesses and trade schools for the past decade. And someone who has been a great mentor to me and has counseled me as a township trustee, helping me know when to say no, when to push back, when to fight corporate welfare, and how to handle economic development tools. He is very focused on making sure that people can keep the fruits of their labor, keeping the government out of our businesses, incentivizing small businesses, and that would be Senate Majority Whip George Lane. He is my dearest longtime friend, and my greatest mentor in economic development and how to drive the state forward.
Who's your favorite state rep, though?
Oh goodness, I have a handful of them, but
Just one.
Nick Santucci is a very dear friend of mine, and I really like his style.
Okay. PJ, check out Nick's score, but Tom Young came in at, I think, 86.36.
Well, so 86 was his lifetime score, his session score was 66.
Okay, I think everybody has a 66 session score, right?
I can look.
Yeah. Lifetime score. Stephen, we gotta get those numbers up, like they say in the Wolfe of Wall Street. Gotta get those numbers up.
There are numerous times I've had conversations with him where I've disagreed on policy issues and have had that relationship where I can push back on things I didn't agree with. But ultimately, obviously, he was a legislator, so he can make those decisions. But I hope to model myself after the way he gets things done. But obviously, don't agree 100% on everything that he says.
Oh, and back here.
Yeah, you can't
Yes,
forget that. Right. All right, Bill Dixell here.
Hi, guys. I have two quick questions. One, as state legislators, would you stop the silliness and spearhead or support double taxing people and support an initiative where people pay their payroll tax to the city where they live rather than getting double taxed?
Yeah.
That's an issue we're dealing with in Marion now. It's silly. People are paying taxes to two different cities when they live in one. That's number one. Number two, Wesley, I have to say I'm glad I met you tonight and hearing what you say, because a few years ago when you ran against Tracy Richardson, we were getting postcards that were horrible.
Yes.
As somebody that was supporting you, it was one of the, honestly, it was embarrassingly dirty. And I understand that you were not putting those postcards out, some political action committee was. So both of you, what are you going to do to make sure the issues are clear and you stay above the fray of dirty politics, so we can vote for you with a clear mind and we know exactly where you stand on issues rather than let somebody else set the tone for you?
I don't know. Who goes first? Me?
Go ahead, Wesley.
You are not wrong, and it is, what the most disturbing thing about being in an election is campaign finance and the way that 501c4s can operate. And you are not wrong. All of it is very crass. My husband and I even contacted an attorney because we didn't like it. I thought it looked bad on me. There was literally nothing I could do. If I even tried, it would be considered collusion. But I will tell you, I endured it as well. $700,000 in negative ads was spent against me. And if you remember, those ads on Tracy was really around Blue 22 votes and Larry Householder. It was really rooted in votes, but it was the imagery that was just disturbing, and it was not okay. It goes against my values. I, on the other hand, endured it in a different way. To me, it was personal. There was a lot of lies. We've never had tax troubles. We've never owed taxes. It said a lot of personal things that are very, very untrue, and I would be happy to address every single one of them publicly if need be, and I've done that. And I think Judy O'Hare, one of the organizers, and a few of the people in the room have read my comments on that. To stay above the fray. It's really hard to stay above the fray when a political action committee is spending $500,000 to drive the narrative, and you as a state rep are trying to fundraise $100 here, $200 there. What is really great about this race, though, is because there is not an incumbent trying to save a seat to save a certain speaker. Jason Stevens, what he was saying earlier, is that we are able to live out these races in a way where we get to decide the narrative, because you're not going to see 501c4s swooping in trying to defame somebody else to try to win that seat for a speaker. That is what that was all about. It is wrong. If I had it my way, I would reform campaign finance completely. Everybody gets $10,000, and that's it, and good luck to you, and you better go knock on some doors. I mean, that's what I think should happen. I hope that answers that question, but my campaign will remain positive. The most you will see out of me is contrast, which I will say, and Stephen, I'm sure he's read this and he's not going to be offended by this. I'm the only candidate in this race that's ever paid property tax. I'm the only candidate in this race that has ever worked in the private sector, who has built a business, who's signed front and back of a paycheck, who has built jobs, and that is not to slight my opponents. That's just to draw a contrast and show you what I'm all about, raising kids in this cultural climate that we see today. There was another question.
Payroll tax to your local, to where you live.
Oh yeah, well, I definitely disagree with being double taxed, and I know that Marion is in a very hard place because you're in a deficit and you're trying to deal with that. Mary's telling me it's time, but I do not believe in double taxation in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, I appreciate both questions. Serving on the Marysville City Council, I see Marysville is in a situation many residents live in the city, but they're working down in Columbus. They're working in surrounding areas, so they're paying that income tax to different cities in central Ohio, but also paying it to the city of Marysville. I totally agree with you. I am not in favor of having residents be double taxed. I think the place where you're working if you live in Marysville and work in Marysville, then obviously you're not paying there. But if you work down in Columbus but live in the city of Marysville, I think Columbus should be the one paying that credit, giving you that credit on your income tax, so you're not getting double taxed. Because if you're living in a city like Marion or like Marysville, you're using the roads, you're using that water infrastructure, you're using the wastewater, the storm water. You're going through you're the ones that are actively being engaged in the city itself. If you go by, you've seen people going into Columbus, they're there for, they're 7, 8, 9 hours a day that they're there, and they come back to the city they live in. So you're using those infrastructure resources that are coming out of the city's budget, the general fund. So I think that's my kind of viewpoint on that. The city that you're working in should be the one offering that tax credit, opposed to the city that you're living in giving you one, for wherever you're working at. Because a lot of these smaller local communities, smaller cities are the ones that are being hurt by this. Big cities like Columbus obviously benefit from everyone coming in, paying their income tax there. They're not going to offer that credit because everyone's living in the city and people are coming into work, so they have the best of both worlds. But in regards to your second question, my focus of this campaign is, myself, my ideas, my policies, what I feel works. When I go door to door and when I speak with residents, I'm not into throwing mud and having negative conversations about my opponents. I don't bring it up, we disagree on things, we agree on things. I think we can all agree that any one of us three that are in this race are better than the Democrat option, and will be better than a Democrat down in Columbus for the 86th House District. So I'm not one to go after my opponents and attack them and throw attack mailers and do all that. And I don't foresee any big groups or PACs or whatever getting behind me and throwing attack ads at my opponents. My campaign is focused on myself, the people that I've spent my life around, the community that I live in, and making sure that we have the best decisions made for the city of Marion, the city of Marysville, Richwood, Plain City, everywhere around me in Marion County. That's my focus. Not arguing about who's a better candidate. I'll present my views, and hopefully you agree with those and decide to vote for me.
Thank you, candidates. And PJ, what was Nick Santucci was 89.42, I think?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Alright, so pretty solid there. Alright, we got another question here. What would you suggest we and or our representatives do to eliminate the bias and indoctrination that is going on in our public school systems? So it says college, but I'm just going to edit that to say public school system, so.
Yeah, I would say, looking at both public schools here, locally at the K-12 level, but also at the state level, being involved, getting citizens out and having conversations, going to board meetings, meeting with school board members, voicing those concerns and opinions, and making sure that decisions that are made are the ones that we feel are the right decision. I feel like that is the best way to do that without getting too much state involvement. I'm for local government, local control. I don't want the state dictating everything. Every school district's different, but it's the local residents that need to be the ones going to these meetings, talking with their educators, talking with the board members to make sure that good legislation is passed at that board level. I see as at the city, there are, tons of people that, will comment on Facebook, and that's great, but there's very few that want to come out to our council meetings, have those conversations, that make their voices heard, make sure that we're having a good, productive conversation. So I think getting involved at a local level is key, especially when you're talking K through 12. But I also think looking at what I've worked on, it would be Senate Bill 1 of this last General Assembly, the Higher Education Enhancement Act, I believe was the title of it, but working to get DEI out of our state universities, making sure that the taxpayer dollars are being spent at these taxes at the state universities aren't indoctrinating our youth. There's so many students at these universities that are afraid to speak their mind and speak their beliefs because they fear that they're going to get a bad grade or expelled or get in trouble with the professor or the dean because they have a conservative viewpoint. Most of the people that work in the state legislature as a staff or aide or whoever it might be are typically college students or out of college students. And 99% of them feel that same way, that you can't express your beliefs in our state colleges. Private colleges are a little different, but I think working on that bill is a great step to making sure that our state institutions aren't indoctrinating our youth as they're coming up at a very impressionable age, but also having conversations and being able to have a conversation on something that you disagree with someone on and not immediately being shut down because you disagree. I've seen those tax dollars at work, and we have to make sure that teachers, professors aren't spending time indoctrinating kids on social issues, on beliefs of different things, on gender ideology, and focusing on teaching our children in the K through 12 level what they need to know to be successful, and also at the state level and universities, preparing them to get a good job, to be involved in the workforce. And having those, productive engagements, not kind of a politically motivated focus.
So Stephen and I are very like-minded here. There's nothing that you just said that I disagree with. I would just take it one step further in that, hit school districts in the pocketbook when they don't comply with the regulation you put forward. So I think that laws need to be passed that prohibit DEI and social emotional learning and the expenditure of these things. And then you look at outcomes, and those districts are rewarded or de-incentivized. You de-incentivize it, really. You say, if you don't abide by this, here's your slice of the pie. And it will incentivize them to get on board with the right things, back to the basics, ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. And I think that our educators, I think they're underpaid, frankly. And I think that there's a way to incentivize school districts to meet metrics and, taking tax dollars and focusing on getting them at higher levels of reading, writing, and math. And then if we have standards and you are funded by meeting these standards, not only are we going to produce children that are, excelling, but you're going to have school districts being competitive to make sure that they get all the DEI out, that they're following the mandates that we're putting, forward. And if they don't, if they're not working in the same direction with these values, then they don't get the funding that they need.
All right, well, thank you so much. We got one more question over here.
I can speak up. I have a voice.
Okay.
Okay, so 13 years ago, Chuck and I got burglarized, and we were actually burglarized by drug addicts. And they stole my jewelry, and they stole my silverware, different things. When I started investigating the whole process of how all this was happening and why it was happening, I found out that many people in Marion County, and there may be people in here that had gotten burglarized 12, 13 years ago because there was a huge ring of drugs being dispersed throughout this area. Anyhow, there is a law or a revised code, Ohio revised code, for precious metal licensing. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because our pawn shops and the places that buy the stolen property, it's a fence, complete fence. So our law in Ohio fences the whole process with these pawn dealers and these people who buy precious metals and have the license by the state of Ohio. They're not responsible. So when we finally found out where my jewelry was, I had to buy my own jewelry back.
Wow.
And it was totally devastating. But our laws in Ohio have not been changed since then, even though I forced it through the state level. I went through different avenues trying to get a voice heard for this because it is a fence for these people. Now, the only provision that we have as residents in these communities is that your local law officials are to go and check daily what they purchase. And if they don't do it or they don't put it online and no one from the police department or your local sheriff's department goes in and researches it, nothing ever gets done. I think that this is part of our problem in Ohio with the chains of the drugs from Cleveland down to Cincinnati and through the I-71 corridor and the I-75 corridor, that this is an issue. And at this point, after 13 years of investigating it, I can say that we were fortunate that they got caught in Union County because Marion County Sheriff at the time was not even sending his people out to find it. And if it hadn't been for Mr. Claiborne in Marion County over by Whirlpool on Campbell Road catching them, and we had already had who they were, and working with Union County Sheriff, with the Marion County Sheriff's Department, they would still been doing it. The whole process, the whole cycle would have continued, is what I'm trying to say. So I guess my thing is that whoever becomes a legislator for us, I would like for you to look into this because it is a major fencing system between drugs, stolen property, and the only people that are making good on it are the pawn shops.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's, I think that a good example of this is making sure we have strong and supported local law enforcement, making sure that as a municipality like Marysville, that we are being strict on how we're handling issues of drug sales. I believe it was, it might have been a couple days ago, where there was a drug bust within our city and cracking down on the flow of drugs from Columbus into this area, from Cleveland, making sure that we're supporting our law enforcement in that regard. And our focus as a city, our number one priority is public safety, and making sure that as we go through these budgets, as we go through looking at how we're policing different areas, that we are protecting our citizens first and foremost. But also, yes, looking at issues like that where, sure, I watch numerous, crime shows, CSI, whatever it is, and they always, issues come up where, they sold their stuff to the pawn shops, and there's some that are in on it and they're fine. There's others that are obviously not, they don't know it's a stolen property. But I think we have to crack down on that. It's something that you're obviously bringing here to my attention, and I appreciate that. Making sure that we're supporting our local citizens, keeping things safe, but also making sure that laws are being followed and updating things that need to be updated. We can't just let things be because it might not seem like an issue at the time.
So at the time, Jamie Patton was our sheriff at that time, and he clearly explained to me that the Russians control our pawn shops throughout Ohio, and that they pay big bucks to have people speak for them at the State House.
Okay, so first and foremost, that would be a priority to make sure that no private entity could ever capitalize on proven stolen property ever. I mean, that's just simple to me. And I don't think that we need a ton of bureaucracy and this drawn-out system. If you as a person are able to clearly identify that your property is stolen and it is now in the hands of a private business and they are about to profit on it, it should just be hands down, over and done. We don't need more bureaucracy as long as that can be proven, and I think that you are saying that you did that and you couldn't get your stuff back. I see that as simple, very straightforward common sense. I would work very hard to make a law, to drive a law forward that would handle that in very simple, pragmatic fashion. And I have great relationships with our prosecutors. I'm endorsed by the prosecutor in Marion and former law enforcement right here. So I'm not an expert in these things, but I know how to find them, and they are my partners right now. And that to me is very simple, and I think I don't think that would take a lot of convincing down at the State House, but you are not wrong. There are lobbyist groups, and that is why you will not find one lobbyist firm in my campaign finance.
All right, that concludes our questions from the audience. If you do have a question that comes up that you wanted to ask, I'm sure you can track one of these two down before they get to their vehicles and get back to Union County. But we're going to go ahead and allow you up to 5 minutes for a closing statement. And then we'll probably not do the sing-along since we ran a little bit long tonight. But if Mrs. Bredeball would like to just play it as we exit, then we'll go ahead and adjourn shortly. So I believe you opened, Wesleyan. So Stephen, if you want to go ahead and give your closing remarks.
Well, I appreciate everyone coming out. I'm always an advocate of getting involved in local government, getting involved with the people that are asking you for their vote or for your vote. So it's a very important thing that we're having a conversation here tonight. I appreciate the questions. The answers that we have hopefully are well thought out, and you see that the thought process that goes into how I make a decision and why I'm running in this race. I hope that as we continue to have these conversations, as we continue, and I spoke with some residents tonight that I stopped by their house last weekend, left them a door hanger, and had the ability to have a conversation again here tonight. We have more information spreading back and forth between myself, my campaign, and you, and answer these questions. But my focus in this campaign and why I'm involved is the people. Is the community that I live in. It's the community that I grew up in. And it's the conversations and the relationships that have formed over 27 years of living here and being involved in state government and local government. It's a focus of mine to make sure that the person in Columbus has the best interest of the residents of Marion and Union counties at heart. And that's why my focus has been reducing spending at the state level, reforming property tax, and protecting our conservative values. The right to life. Second Amendment, making sure that we have less government involvement in our local governments, and make sure that we have the needed funding at our schools, and that we're being responsible as state officials, because the money that we're spending isn't the state's money, it's the people's money. So I appreciate everyone coming out. If you have any questions, more than happy to talk. You can reach me at any time. You know, my website is online, and you know, I have my email and phone number on there, so you can contact me as well. But I appreciate everyone coming out and the great questions.
Thank you. Again, thank you for being here tonight. I just would like to impart to you all that I am known for being quite the fighter, and I look forward to fighting for our families at the State House. I feel that I am the most well-rounded in this race when it comes to understanding a vast variety of issues, in that I have lived every socioeconomic reality spanning from Marion to Jerome Township, where I live to this day. Again, I'm one of 6 kids. My mother was a young widow. I grew up under the poverty line. She raised us on less than $50,000. I went to trade school. I didn't go to college. When I was 17 years old, I lived in women's community housing, and I pulled myself out of poverty and built a beautiful life for myself, rooted in entrepreneurship with my husband. And I got a son over here who runs his own lawn mowing company. He's 13 years old. He bills and invoices his own residents, his own customers, and he breaks in about $3,000 a year. 13 years old, has little zero turns that's around the neighborhood. And my daughter right here, she has aspirations to be a business owner herself someday, and I know that she loves the beauty industry like her mother did. I fought for the beauty industry at the state legislature as a part of the trade industry. Yes, and she's a great singer, by the way, too. She's been singing the Star Spangled Banner, so if you ever come to one of my fundraisers, you may hear my daughter leading us in that song. But as an entrepreneur, it is very important to me that I am staying true to the kitchen table issues, which is keeping your hard-earned money in your bank account. And you will see me continue to fight on the issues that we see right now. I was the first official in Ohio that drove a moratorium on data centers in the state. And I did that before Bernie Moreno was talking about it. I did that before you were seeing reports on Trump talking about it even. I was the first to rip off that Band-Aid and convince my colleagues to do that, because I do not believe that the wealthiest corporations in the world should be getting tax abatements when you are faced with a 30% increase yourself. And when it comes to the water in Marion, you may know, I don't wait to get elected or get sworn in to start making moves. I've already pushed back and testified and been in contact with Aqua Ohio and their competitors to drive this issue forward. I don't believe Marion residents should be faced with a 21% increase when they have a low, poor water quality. In fact, I think that you deserve a reimbursement at this rate. So I am that person that I don't wait for permission. I want you to know this about me. I don't wait for permission to do the right thing. I don't wait till I'm elected to do the right thing. I've already realized as an outsider over the past 10 years, the State House is my house. It is your house. People are elected. I may be the representative, but it belongs to you. And when I ran a statewide association and built that association to 8,000 members and bring in 250 business owners to kill a special interest group bill downtown without giving a politician one single dime, I used to say, we don't rally in the streets. We take our seat at the table. I'll do it now. I'll do it before I'm elected. I'll do it if I'm not elected. But I hope that I do have your vote, because I'm not in this for a career. This is a passion. This is a love. God has been good to me. I didn't come from much, but there were a few times in my life where I was in the right place at the right time, and that was my good Lord that made that happen. So I feel that to whom much is given, much is required, and I have an example to set over here. So thank you for your time, and I hope to earn your vote.
Let's hear it for Wesleyan Davis and Peter Wolfe. Quite possibly the next state representative. So we thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you learned more about the candidates that will be representing you in the State House. And again, it's very crucial that we all do our part, do our duty. You have a duty to be informed as a voter and to be actively involved in your government. Otherwise, you deserve what you get, in my opinion. So we thank you all for joining us here again. Check out MarionWatch.com or Marion Watch, Operation Marion Watchman, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, if you want to view tonight's event. And we're also wanting to let people know that we're in the process of trying to organize a event, a meet and greet, and a candidates forum that's going to feature the 4 candidates for Marion County Commissioner. So again, Mr. Mooney, will you commit to attending?
Yes, I will.
Mr. Schauber, over there in the corner, while isolated by yourself, will you commit to coming back here for a candidates night for Commissioner?
Depends on the day.
Oh, okay. All
We're
right, all
19
right.
days away from early voting, and as soon as the early voting starts, I will be every evening campaigning.
All right, well, we'll try to fit it into everybody's schedule, but we also like to extend invitations. Jay, Christy Neff, you're invited to this hypothetical candidates night that we're going to do for Marion County Commissioner candidates, and also Ken Stuyvesant. So some pretty important races coming up on the ballot on May 5th. Again, that's the Republican primary. So make sure that you're researching each of the candidates and you're making an informed decision. So we thank you so much. Again, if you have a quick question, I'm sure you can grab one of these two before they hightail it back to Union County. But that's it for me, and thanks again, folks.